Hey, what's up guys, Riff here. So today we're going to be once again talking about the failure of Concord because somehow, just when you thought it hit rock bottom, it gets even worse. Now, we know the story of Concord, right? AAA release, comes out, sells only 25,000 units, terrible player numbers, and eventually, despite making $1 million in revenue, that wouldn't even matter because that number would be refunded to customers because ultimately Concord would shut down. Now, looking back at this game, a lot of people made predictions as to how much money this game actually cost Firewalk Studios and Sony. And there was a number of $200 million. A lot of people genuinely believed that was the number that this game lost based on some comparisons to other AAA releases like Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. However, as it turns out, we were all wrong. We were way off on that number. In fact, it was even worse. So as this headline says, rumor, Concord reportedly cost $400 million to develop. That does not include the cost of Sony's acquisition of Firewalk Studios to even get involved with this project in the first place. Now, we hear this rumor thanks to Colin Mor, who is a former journalist, still covers some things when people come to him with reports, and he had an insider from Concord, a person from Firewalk Studios, who came in and shared some crazy information about this game and its development. So right off the bat, the biggest thing is talking about the price label of this game, stating that this game cost $400 million to develop, according to this insider who worked on Concord.
And someone who worked on Concord reached out to me, and I verified who this person was and went through all of that and talked to this person extensively, for a long time. Ooh. And got some, I think, interesting information that I can share about Concord. I think people will be interested about it. The reason that I wanted to talk about it is because some of the assumptions that I had made about the game were dead wrong as far as how much it cost and how much Sony really lost on it. So the big thing that you really need to know here about this is that Concord cost about $400 million to make.
Oh my God.
And
now, obviously, a $400 million price tag, that would be easily the biggest flop in the history of the gaming industry. There is no number even close to that. But what gets even crazier is when you think about the acquisition of Firewalk Studios by Sony, because at that point, it is alleged that Firewalk had spent $200 million, at least with the former owner of Firewalk Studios, and then Sony got involved. And at that point, it was in the alpha stage. And apparently it was such a mess, it was basically laughable. And to remedy that situation, Sony had to outsource a bunch of work, and over the past year or so, spent another $200 million working on this game. Just imagine, it used to be a lot worse when they used up their first round of $200 million. And again, keep in mind, as pointed out here, that $400 million number does not include the cost of Sony's acquisition of Firewalk Studios from probably Monsters in the first place. So who knows just how high this number got.
When the game had already had $200 million spent on it and was basically in an alpha form in quarter one of 2023, from that point until the game launched, Sony spent another $200 million on it. The scuttlebutt behind the scenes about Concord is that the game was in a laughable shape when it was shown, and basically like when the alpha was ready to go and they were kind of being like, we're ready to kind of get moving towards getting this thing out in the next year or two. It was in such horrible shape that Sony felt like they needed to spend that much money again. So, 200 plus 200 to get the game to the MVP status, not to the status of it being like a great game, to get it to just viability.
Now, I think when it comes to the development of Concord, there's obviously a lot of delusion, okay? People have believed some absolutely insane things about this game and its potential, right? They really believed, based on the $400 million price tag, that this game was going to be crazy. In fact, they believed it was going to go much further than just a successful game. It was going to be a full-fledged media sensation, one of the biggest franchises out there. In fact, they compared Concord to Star Wars. They believed this could be the next Star Wars, and it was described verbatim as the future of PlayStation. Something that could be repeatedly visited over and over again across various forms of media, and there's going to be so many crossovers and additional products and collaborations that this was going to be something that would change PlayStation, and the idea of this is absolutely laughable.
Now the question is, why? Why did this happen? This game was heavily championed behind the scenes. Now we know this because Sony ended up, what's funny is that the game is presented in Q1 2023 as this, we're kind of getting towards the end. The game is nowhere near being done. It's in a horrible position. And then Sony buys the team. The idea behind this was, and the term apparently verbatim had been used, that Concord is the future of PlayStation. That they had such major ambition for this game that it was referred to internally as a Star Wars-like project for Sony. That it can be repeatedly revisited over and over and over again, not only in cross-media, but in what we were seeing. We've already kind of seen little bits of it. So the weekly story vignettes that they were going to release, and then, of course, the inclusion in Amazon's Secret Levels anthology, that's like just scratching the surface of it.
Now, based on everything we've seen, especially when it comes to some of the public statements of developers and other people who are on the team at Firewalk Studios, I think this next part is not too surprising to you. There's a lot of claims from this insider that there was a toxic positivity vibe where you're not allowed to say anything about this game internally. You can't criticize the game. And when you look at the people who, again, worked on this game and they come out and they're facing criticism, they're calling their critics a bunch of talentless losers and things like that, and they're just completely shut off to any criticism despite the very noticeable issues with this game. It doesn't surprise you that toxic positivity would be a part of their work culture, especially when it seems like when you have these diversity elements and these DEI elements in the studio itself, I feel like there is also this extra cancel culture pressure to avoid criticizing anything that's really fits under the definition of woke, and that's what Concord was.
A major thing about the game is that there was, and I think we can kind of get this vibe from just the nature of the people making it and kind of the way the game reads and all that, a toxic positivity vibe. You weren't allowed to say anything, apparently internally, about this game. About how like something's wrong with it, character designs are not right, and so on and so forth. They really truly believe this was Herman Hulst's baby, apparently. And he internally was himself a massive champion of the game.
And as pointed out in that Park Place article that we're looking at right now, there really seems to be no lesson learned. We've seen a couple of developers and former members of the team that worked on Concord come out as a result of this game and its failure and say, this was a really difficult time for us, and we really have damaged our careers by being a part of this mess. And a lot of these employees are reporting that they're having a hard time getting new jobs in the industry, and some of them just don't want to get involved at all. This was such a bad experience that they don't want to continue their careers in this space. However, it doesn't seem like a lot of them have really understood why this all happened in the first place. And it doesn't seem like they want to face the fact that DEI and all this woke ideology attached to it is part of the reason this failed. A big part of the reason this failed. Not just from an optics point of view, like it's just unappealing to gamers to know that this stuff is in the game, but on top of that, it seems like it actually affected the workplace environment in this situation, and now they have this absolute disaster, but they still, because of DEI and their fears of it, they won't denounce it. They will not even acknowledge that this was part of the problem in the first place, and that's why these studios and all these other people who are involved with Concord, they just won't learn their lesson from this unless they actually realize what the true problem here is. And here is the actual clip if you want. I'll put a link to it in the description. This was definitely very informative, and honestly, it doesn't surprise any of us that these things were going on within the teams developing Concord. But overall, I think it's pretty obvious this is one of the biggest, if not easily, honestly, easily the biggest failure in gaming history. And again, will lessons be learned from this? Probably not. But anyways, that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. And I'll see you guys next time.